until 60 Minutes opens its archives.
Pretty loose for a Friday night.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not my first show.
With moments you haven't heard before.
It's almost more fun that way when you have something to prove.
Listen to 60 Minutes, A Second Look, wherever you get your podcasts.
You've probably heard of the NCIS from the hit TV series, but we're about to take you inside its real-life work. Listen to 48 Hours NCIS early and ad-free on the 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts.
Well, I'm Robert Costa in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. President-elect Trump was on Wall Street this morning for a symbolic moment, unlike any in recent decades. Here's the president-elect ringing the open bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, Ivanka Trump, and Melania Trump joined him. The last president to do so was Ronald Reagan. We also learned today that Trump will succeed Taylor Swift as Time Magazine's Person of the Year. It's the second time Trump has been awarded that distinction. While in Lower Manhattan, the president-elect discussed how it's different this time around.
I think I like it better this time.
Hey, I'm echoing in my...
But we did a good job. We had a great first term, despite a lot of turmoil caused unnecessarily. But the media's tamed down a little bit. They're liking us much better now, I think. If they don't, we'll have to just take them on again, and we don't want to do that.
We begin with our Nicole Killian in West Palm Beach, Florida. Nicole, great to see you. So President-elect Trump was at the New York Stock Exchange. You're down in Florida. He's now back in Florida. What's the message on the economy?
Well, look, what was interesting about that interview that he did with Time Magazine, and keep in mind the interview was done back in late November, he actually acknowledged that it could be hard to bring grocery prices down, which is significant because that is something that he heavily campaigned on, curbing inflation. And he said, you know, once prices are up, it's hard to get them down. It's really hard. That being said, he's obviously committed to doing so. And he told CNBC in a separate interview today that he hopes that Americans will start seeing lower grocery prices soon, and, you know, really kind of speaking more to the comprehensive economic approach. For instance, obviously, if he moves forward with tariffs, he tries to incentivize American businesses and other companies to do business in the United States, create their products here. In doing so, and that in turn, he believes will ultimately bring prices down across the board. So that's kind of the broader sell or argument, if you will, with respect to his economic plan.
And the big talk among those in President-elect Trump's inner circle is the Time Magazine cover. Let's listen to what Trump had to say about that.
I do want to thank Time Magazine. I've been on the cover many times. I don't know who has the record, but I can only probably talk well about 25% of the covers. 25% are great. The others I just sort of hide.
Nicole, President-elect Trump also gave a wide-ranging interview to Time Magazine as part of that cover story. What were your big takeaways after reading it?
Well, probably one of the other notable excerpts from that interview was about his plans for mass deportation. That's something he talked about at length in that Meet the Press interview that he did earlier in the week. But also what was interesting about this Time Magazine interview is that he really talked about trying to maximize the law to the fullest extent. So, for instance, when it comes to this mass deportation plan, he intends to order law enforcement and potentially the military to assist in trying to deport individuals. And keep in mind, federal law prohibits the military from going after civilians, but that's where he said this line about trying to use the law to the maximum extent possible. So really showing that the president-elect may try to really push the envelope, if you will, in terms of this gargantuan plan to try to deport some 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. He also reiterated that he doesn't want to break up families if he doesn't have to, but at the same time, he feels that if needed, perhaps deport the entire family back. And he also talked about the possibility of having to build detention camps here in the United States as a temporary haven in that deportation process. And he said something to the effect of, you know, I don't care, kind of whatever it takes to get him out, we got to get him out.
Nicole Killian in West Palm Beach, Florida. Thank you. Let's bring in our new senior White House reporter, Jennifer Jacobs. Jen, great to have you here on set. Welcome to CBS News. I know a lot of people have been saying that to you during the course of your time here the last few days. You've been busy reporting. One of the big scoops you've gotten for CBS News so far is that President-elect Trump has invited the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, to come to the inauguration. Based on your reporting, how did that invitation get made? How serious of an invitation is it? Is it performative and symbolic? Is it actually something Trump and his allies want to happen? What's your full spectrum read on the situation?
How it happened, the details are a little fuzzy on that, but our sources told us today that it came outside of the normal diplomatic channels. So it wasn't a very formal invitation where it went through the regular channels. It was some sort of a back channel. It's a little fuzzy there. Did he mean it seriously? I'm sure he did. I mean, you know, Donald Trump loves to host, for one thing. So he likes to make people feel welcome and to feel like he has a bond with them. And I know a lot of world leaders are trying to get an audience with him these days. I was told that, you know, the staff have had to limit the phone call time for all the leaders who are calling to congratulate him. It's as little as a minute is what they're giving them. There's executives who want to go see him. Everybody wants an audience with Donald Trump right now. So his time is one thing he can bestow as kind of a gift to Xi. So as far as I know, he was extending an informal invitation to Xi saying, hey, if you want to come to this event, I'd love to have you. We just broke the news that, indeed, they're not expecting him to come. So it does not sound like he's going to be in D.C. for the inauguration. Based on your conversations with your sources, what else are you expecting potentially from the Trump inauguration in 2025? Well, I know that a lot of world leaders are going to come. We are expecting heads of state. We're expecting a lot of foreign dignitaries. We were told today that the inauguration has actually designated someone to handle protocol for the event. So that's just an interesting take. There's always been foreign dignitaries in the audience in the past. They aren't an official part of the ceremony. But if you've got heads of state there, I'm assuming there's got to be decisions made on where they sit in the audience. They're going to be wanting to be placed in the front row or somewhere near. But then think about the optics of that if you have a world leader having to look up and, you know, at the dais as this transfer of power is taking place. So it's this whole new set of planning and protocols that are going to have to take place for this very important ceremony, which, as you know, Trump is, I'm sure, looking forward to. You remember how excited he was about his crowd size the last inauguration. And now, and back then, he was kind of a mystery to people. He wasn't very well known on the world stage. Now, world leaders are treating him almost as an incumbent, right? They know him. They have a relationship with him. They're trying to get time with him. And I think he is excited about, I'm assuming, he's excited about the thought of all these people who would be flocking to come to his big event. What else are you hearing about what's going on behind the scenes with Trump? Well, what else can I tell you? I know we've got 1 million dignitaries coming. I was told that it's really expensive right now to get a spot at a landing base at Dulles. I have a source at Dulles who told me that the private FBO is charging as much as $33,000 for a flight to land there. So I just know that it's an overwhelming kind of feeling of everyone wanting to come crowd around Trump and get his ear and golf with him, have conversations with him, figure out what he wants to do, get their ideas in front of him. A source at Dulles, Jen, you can help me when I miss a flight at DCA to get that source at Dulles onto a flight over there. Jen Jacobs, thank you so much. Meanwhile, an American man has been found in Syria after being freed from a prison earlier this week. He identified himself as Travis Timmerman from Missouri. He told CBS News he was detained after entering Syria without permission 7 months ago. On Monday, one day after rebels seized the nation's capital, two armed men allegedly broke down his prison door and he walked out. He discussed what it was like to be imprisoned in Syria with CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer.
It wasn't bad. I was never beaten. The only really bad part was that I couldn't go to the bathroom when I wanted to. I was only let out 3 times a day to go to the bathroom. So that was quite the hardship.
CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayyab is in Aleppo with more.
Well, we're here in what's left of Aleppo's ancient souk. And you can just see the destruction here. It is breathtaking. But here's the thing about Aleppo. This was the seat of rebel power for years, its urban stronghold. And about 6 years or so, Assad and his forces, along with Russia, carried out a massive campaign to rid this city of rebels, destroying so much of Aleppo's ancient history. And in the years that Assad's been in power, nothing was rebuilt. So much of this city remains in ruins. And 2 weeks ago, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and its forces came in and, in their words, liberated this city. And yet the ruins remain. And the question for so many Syrians, when they look at the puzzle that is their country, that they are going to try to piece back together again, is how do you rebuild so much of what has been lost? And when you look at all of this destruction, it is an enormous, enormous task. But Syrians tell us that together, united, they'll be able to do it. Back to you.
Imtiaz Tayyib, thank you. Two top Senate Democrats are calling on Donald Trump's picks to be required to disclose any communications with the president-elect's longtime advisor and lawyer Boris Epstein. Allegations recently surfaced that Epstein was soliciting financial payments in connection to potential appointments in Trump's cabinet. Our Dan Kleitman joins us now. Dan, thanks for being here. What are you learning about what Senate Democrats want to hear about Boris and his interactions?
Well, Robert, thanks for having me. We got a hold of this letter earlier today, and basically Democrats are looking to continue to put pressure on the incoming Trump administration and the Trump transition to really look into these allegations against Boris Epstein. Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Whitehouse, and Senator Dick Durbin, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, sent this letter to Lindsey Graham and Senator Chuck Grassley, who is the incoming chair of the Judiciary Committee, and is putting pressure on them, subtle pressure, but pressure nonetheless, to get them to continue to ask questions as part of the confirmation process. So they've asked that all of the nominees preserve their records and provide to the committee any communications they had with Boris Epstein about these allegations and about whether he sought to get payments from them in exchange for helping them with their nominations. I should say that Epstein has denied these allegations. A source with the transition told CBS News that this is a pathetic lawfare tactic. But nevertheless, there are people really on both sides of the aisle who are, I think, looking to continue to probe these allegations and to make sure that they are part of the confirmation process to get to the bottom of what happened.
Dan Kleitman, thanks for your reporting. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
What's the impact of the Trump transition, not only in Washington, but out in the state? We'll ask New Hampshire Republican Governor Chris Sununu just that after the break. You're watching America Decides.
"60 Minutes takes you to Paris for the unveiling of the restored Cathedral of Notre Dame.
It resisted to 2 world wars. This is a message of achievement.
How did America help? You'll be surprised as you get a tour like no other. It's time for 60 Minutes.
I can see clearly now. Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, you coming?
No, I'm going to stick around for an hour.
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun. Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
and reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
So if we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
I think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se. What price should Moscow pay for trying to manipulate American voters? Isn't that giving people false hope? That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. And that means a civil conversation with perspective.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go, with 48 Hours Podcasts. Real crimes, real lives, real justice. Listen to 48 Hours Podcasts wherever you get your podcasts.
We are tired of losing. Republicans are tired of losing. We're tired of losers. We're tired of Donald Trump.
That seemed like a different time. New Hampshire Republican Governor Chris Sununu on the trail for former Governor Nikki Haley during the Republican primary nearly a year ago. A lot, of course, has changed since then in that appearance. Like many Haley supporters, the governor has now chosen to back President-elect Trump. He recently said the GOP is, quote, a big tent party. And Governor Chris Sununu of New Hampshire joins us now. Governor, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you're tracking everything that's going on with President-elect Trump and his transition. As you watch from New Hampshire, you see a lot of activity down there at Mar-a-Lago. But where's the signal? Where's the noise?
Well, I'll tell you this. He's moving, right? And I think that's something that everyone's watching. They're not waiting. They're not going slow. Everything from all these picks that have come forward, he's basically filled all the significant and even some lesser positions in terms of who he wants to be on his team. I've been watching the Doge stuff very closely. I mean, it's only been about a month and a week or so, not even a month and a half since the election. And all of this stuff is moving very quickly. So I love that myself. Well, maybe I don't love every pick and everything he's doing, but the fact that they're not sitting around and just taking a victory lap on the win, they want to get to work and they want to move. And so I think that's exactly what the American people elected them to do. Disrupt the establishment, do things a little differently. Don't wait. Don't have the same mistakes as I think they made in the 2017, 2018, which was not knowing how things worked, not, kind of waiting on things, waiting for Congress to do everything that he just was kind of, we should get this done. You got to make it happen in D.C., as you know. And if it doesn't happen, you got to disrupt. So I think they're moving forward. Again, we'll see where some of these picks go. Maybe 2, 3, 4 of them are going to have a little bit of a challenge. I think that's really good, though. I mean, I think the Matt Gaetz episode, as ugly as that was, I think he was a terrible pick. And I think Congress and the Senate stood up and said, no, there's a checks and balance system here. We're not doing that. And if anything, the American people should say, oh, good. This isn't some dictatorship that the left-wing media was telling us it was going to be. It's not just going to be his way or the highway. There is a process in this town to make sure that even though he has been given a pretty clear mandate to get things done, there's going to be pushback on things that don't make sense.
Where do you stand on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be Secretary of HHS? You represent the live free or die state. You deal with a lot of constituents, right, left, center. who don't love mandates, don't love the government. So how do you see him fitting in?
I'm concerned. There's no doubt. Look, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that he's been espousing, and that stuff always makes me nervous. As a governor, we deal with HHS a lot. Every governor does. It's the #1 agency that we deal with. And even more so than HHS directly, it's the sub-agency of CMS, right? Managed Medicaid and Medicare services. I think Dr. Oz has been picked to lead that.
Nominated.
That's one of the most complex positions you can have. Medicaid and Medicare are insanely complex in how it works and the billing codes and reimbursable rates, 1115 waivers. These are really complex things that require a whole different level of expertise. So between the two of them, they bring something to the table, but in terms of the interaction and how government works and where this can go, it's not just a couple ideas. You really have to know how these systems work, especially if you want to fix them. I'm an engineer, and you can have all the ideas on efficiency and cutting things, but if you don't know how the fundamental system works, you're not going to be looking in the right place. So I love that they're somewhat outsiders. I love that they're not politicians, really. RFK, I'm not even going to call him a politician at this point, just kind of a part of that disruption element. But hopefully they surround themselves with good people that know how these systems work. But there's a lot of fat to cut. There's a lot of bureaucracy they can break through. I mean, CMS alone has hundreds of lawyers. Anytime we'd ask for an exception to something, the lawyer would talk to the lawyer, would talk to the lawyer, we'll get back to you in 6 months. To break that type of barrier, those type of barriers down is a huge opportunity. But again, they got to know how they work. So hopefully they'll bring in the right people around them.
You wrote about some of these issues in an opinion column in the Hill newspaper. You say, for models of efficiency, Musk and Doge should ignore D.C. and look to the states. What you just said about CMS, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, when you look at governors and state legislators, when you look at creating efficiencies, cutting departments, instilling more transparency, breaking cabals, finding better ways to create competition for government contracts, states have already done it, right? The Washington and Doge is actually the last one to the table. 49 other states, 50 other states have really already found a lot of those solutions. So that's the good news, is that it's already been done. They can look to states to do it. It's a much bigger scale and a much bigger problem here in Washington because they've allowed themselves to fall prey to really bad habits. You know, I make the example in my op-ed that even California, as fiscally poorly mismanaged they are, even they have constraints they have to live under, right? If they fall into a deficit, unfortunately, they end up raising taxes and not doing right by their people. I have issues with all of that, but they are still create their own guidelines and mandates they have to fit under. DC doesn't have those, and they should, right? Well, whether it's with a balanced budget amendment, I call it a real contract with America that says we in DC are going to play by the same rules that all you have to. You balance budgets, we balance budgets. Means tough decisions, means you can't have everything, can't keep printing your own money, but getting those things back in line will help avoid what I see as a huge fiscal crisis coming in about 8 or 9 years, with Social Security, Medicare, and massive interest payments all going insolvent and creating a real catastrophe. What would the result Washington be? Printing more money, more inflation? Be a disaster, an absolute disaster. Elon Musk and Doge have an opportunity to do it right now. And it means making tough decisions, but that's exactly what they were elected to do. If they don't make tough decisions, they will be penalized in 2026, 2028. They'll be kicked out of office. Not Elon per se, but Congress. Congress has to follow the lead. That's done. We're going to cut this program and that program. That's easy. That's political. They have to really find a structural change in how they finance, their programs here out of Washington.
You are a young governor, but you're also an outgoing governor.
Yes, 29 days.
You decided not to run for re-election. Kelly Ayotte, the former senator, is now going to be the next governor, a Republican from New Hampshire. If President-elect Trump called you up on the phone and said, you might not have this in your plans, but I'd like you to serve in my administration, would you be open to that kind of conversation?
Not looking for a job.
I know you're not looking for a job, but would you listen to a conversation?
Oh, look, when the president calls, I'll always listen to a conversation. I'll always have the conversation. I'm actually excited to get into the private sector a little bit. 8 years and 4 terms in New Hampshire. First in the nation primary, we did a great job. We left it better than we found it. So I'm happy to take the next step into the private sector. I'm just trying to be helpful. I really do.
Earlier today, Time Magazine named President-elect Trump Person of the Year.
Yeah.
And in that article, they said this is the age of Trump. Do you see it that way?
The age of Trump? Well, no, I don't think it should be the age of anybody, frankly. I mean, I think the next few years, what the American people at least have said, we need somebody to break through this establishment. And I repeat that a lot because it's so important. The way D.C. does things doesn't work. DC kind of talks to itself inside this bubble, whether you're talking about the media or the politicians. The age of Trump, the way I see that is breaking the norms, putting things back into states, relocalizing, getting things back out to the people, allowing small businesses and just average farmers and workers have more connection with government, more transparency. That gets them more involved, and I think it makes the whole system better. So for me, that's the opportunity that I see here, is that it's the fix to the broken American system is kind of decentralizing a lot of the cabal, if you will, that has happened here. Whether it's monopolies on contracts or defense contracts or whatever it might be, these big time, is it a surprise over the last 20 years Washington, D.C. has gotten to become the most expensive, high volume place in America? This is where all the money is now. Well, that's not the way it should be. I think people understand that. They've grown a healthy distrust of that. And I think the age of Trump says we're finally going to do something to break through that. And that's my warning, if you will, to the Speaker of the House. Don't talk about political cuts here and there. Talk about fundamental change. If you do not, you'll lose. See, for 20, 30 years, people have said, well, if you make tough decisions in D.C., you'll be penalized in the next election cycle. Just the opposite is the truth now. We've shown in states when you make cuts, when you make tough decisions, you're politically rewarded. D.C. needs to learn from that. You do what the American people have asked you to do, or you're going to be kicked out of office in 26, 28. We don't want that repeat of 2018, 2020. They have an opportunity to do it, but it takes guts and it takes some real decision-making to actually make it happen.
We'll see what happens come January. Governor Chris Sununu of New Hampshire, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We'll see what happens to Governor Sununu next year when he's out of office. It's never easy, meanwhile, for the Democrats to get over their own election loss, but that's what the Democratic National Committee is trying to do. But first, they need to find a new leader. Coming up, more on today's meeting to establish the rules to elect the next chair of the Democratic National Committee. You're watching America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The
grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. Democrats are beginning the sometimes painful process of reshaping their game plan after their defeat in the November elections. Democratic National Committee leadership met today and drew up guidelines that might help elect a new party chair on February 1st of next year. Let's bring in our Hunter Woodall for more. He's been reporting on the DNC and all the machinations behind the scenes. Hunter, great to be here. Let's bring up on the screen the declared candidates for DNC chair. We got Ken Martin there, Martin O'Malley, Ben Winkler, Nate Snyder, James Skoufis. Skoufis or Skoufis?
Skoufis, I believe.
Skoufis. Not everybody knows these names, including myself. I cover national politics, and I'm not sure of the New York State senator who's running for DNC chair. With all apologies to the senator. Clearly getting to know you by now. So these aren't, with respect, I don't see Terry McAuliffe level fundraiser running for DNC chair. I don't see a former governor like Ed Rendell when he was DNC chair, was mayor of Philadelphia, then became DNC chair, then ultimately became governor. Why is this so far the only list of declared candidates? Wasn't there talk of Rahm Emanuel, the ambassador to Japan, maybe jumping into the race? Before we get into this slate, what's your read, your reporting on why these are the people stepping forward and perhaps not others?
Well, look at these election losses that Democrats face. I mean, it is so hard for any Democrat right now to say, look, we really were successful in 2024. And there's very few people that can make that claim. Now, when you look at the candidates in this race, like the chair of the Wisconsin Democrats you mentioned who's running, he can say, hey, we held on to the Senate seat in a tough environment in a state that Trump actually won. Ken Martin of Minnesota, who's the Democratic chair running to be the DNC chair, he can say, look, we've had this winning streak in Minnesota. We've been a bastion of blue in the Midwest for years now. That gives them an argument to make. And there's not many Democrats who can make a positive argument right now that they've spent years and years building the kind of party locally.
So who's the front runner based on the latest talk behind the scenes?
Well, that's a fascinating thing. Here we are. We're in this, hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C. here with, these rules and bylaws, DNC members talking. And the candidates are there. You have, former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, who's probably the most well-known. He's not the front runner in this race. It's, it seems to be, you have Ken Martin, that Minnesota Democratic chair, then Ben Winkler, the chair of the Wisconsin Democrats. They're the people that, DNC members know, they've talked to, they have this relationship, especially with Ken Martin, who's been a DNC member for so long, has built those relationships. It can't be forgotten. This is not a huge election in terms of people actually voting. The DNC has less than 500 members. There's tiny towns in this country much bigger than this.
Have you covered Ken Martin for a while?
I have. I'm a former reporter for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and Ken is very proud of the party he's been able to cultivate in Minnesota. And we think back to 2016. Donald Trump winning all these Midwestern states, those blue wall states. Donald Trump narrowly lost Minnesota, and Ken takes a lot of pride in, hey, even in a year where Democrats were suffering, they still did well in Minnesota.
And they got a running mate in Tim Walz, the governor. Hunter Woodall, thank you for stopping by. We appreciate it. FBI leadership says a, quote, basic step was missed ahead of January 6th in a new report by the Justice Department's IG, the Inspector General. The watchdog there found the FBI failed to commission dozens of field offices across the country to gather information from confidential human sources ahead of the riot. This comes despite the fact that the agency told Congress it had done just that. The IG found the inaccurate statement was not intentional. The report also revealed there were no undercover FBI agents who attended the protests or took part in the attack. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, meanwhile, is being criticized for comments she made about the murder of the United Healthcare CEO. Our political panel will discuss what she said about that. You're watching America Decides.
An
original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I can see clearly now.
Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, coming? No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour.
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
These 7 miles of tunnels were the secret storage site for fuel for the Navy's Pacific Fleet in planes.
So this is one of the tanks.
Oh my gosh.
What happened 20 stories below ground is a story for 60 Minutes.
This thing that was a lifeline for the fleet is a threat.
That's right.
I'm Erin Moriarty of 48 Hours, and of all the cases I've covered, this is the one that troubles me most. Listen to Murder in the Orange Grove, the troubled case against Crosley Green, wherever you get your podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
It can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Sunday morning, a visit with the Wayans at Papa's house, plus affairs of state with the diplomat, and in praise of pigeons. Listen for the trumpet.
Welcome back to America Decides. Many of the contenders lining up to be the next DNC chair agree the road back to power runs through working Americans. One of the head of the people running the Democratic Party these days in the States, Democratic Party Chair Ben Winkler, hammered this point on The Daily Show this week.
We need to show people, working folks across the country, and this is across race and ethnicity, this is rural areas, small towns, cities, suburbs, that we are fighting for them.
Haima Moore and Moore Gillespie join us now. Haima is the former director of the Office of the DNC Chair, Jamie Harrison. Moore previously served as an advisor to former Republican House Speaker John Boehner and former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Great to have you both here with us. We'll begin with you, with the DNC. Yep. You know the DNC as well as anybody.
I think so.
What's the real story here? We hear all these different names. Not everybody knows the names. So you've been inside the building. What's your take?
I mean, look, I think we have a good crop of candidates that are running to be the chairman. I think first and foremost, my former boss, Jamie Harrison, has left the DNC in a much better place than it was 4 or 5 years ago. So I think that's the bottom line. The second thing is you look at Ken Martin, you look at Ben Wickler. These two guys have been in the trenches for many, many cycles right now. You know, you mentioned earlier that we don't have a fundraising juggernaut. Ken Martin raised so much money for the campaign, maybe $3 or $4 million just himself over the last year. And so you look at Ken, you look at Ben, you look at Martin O'Malley and these other guys, and I think the party has a chance to really recapture some of those losses that we expressed in this last election. No, we don't have a celebrity. We talked about that. I think if a Stacey Abrams decided to come into the race today,
is there a chance someone new comes in?
I mean, of course. You know, today in the rules and bylaws, they extended the deadline, so there's still time for someone to enter the race. You know, if a Stacey Abrams comes in the race or Keisha Lance Bottoms, someone like that of that caliber, that could shake it up right now. But as it stands, I do think the race is between Ken and Ben.
Maura, you've worked in the Republican Party at a very high level. Do parties matter anymore, especially on the Republican side? Yes, the RNC exists and it has power to a point, but outside influences like Elon Musk have so much power in terms of organizing and fundraising. How do you see that dynamic moving forward for both Democrats at the DNC and the RNC?
It's certainly going to matter moving forward. I think on the DNC front, you know, if somebody like a Stacey Abrams were to come in, I think that does tarnish the Dems' argument about, you know, the election lies and being willing to say you've lost an election and accept a loss. And I think that's an important part to point out. I think with the RNC side, you know, for Republicans right now, it is Trump's world that we are living in as far as the party goes. He did take over the RNC. He flushed out, you know, a good chunk of the former staffers that worked there by emplacing his daughter-in-law to be the co-chair of the RNC. And so we will see how this plays out beyond this moment. But in this moment, yes, the Elon Musks of the world have a lot of influence. And the parties will live beyond Donald Trump. They'll live beyond this moment. So I think that we need to have people in there who understand the longevity of a campaign and of a political arm and why that matters.
There's a lot of talk still of this killing of the United Healthcare CEO. Let's listen to what the Congresswoman from New York, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, had to say.
This is not to say that an act of violence is justified, but I think for anyone who is confused or shocked or appalled, they need to understand that people interpret and feel and experience denied claims as an act of violence against them.
What's your take on Representative Ocasio-Cortez and how she's framing some reaction to the death of the executive?
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for the representative, for the Congresswoman. But look, at the end of the day, it is never okay to kill someone. It doesn't matter what your grievance is. You do not have the agency or the right to take someone's life. That's just a fact. Now, if we extend the conversation toward health care, and I said this just a couple of days ago, look, I have a sick dad in Louisiana, and we deal with this all the time. We've been delayed, we've been denied, but I've never felt an urge to go and kill someone. And so I think you have to separate the issues. There is a huge issue with the way we administer health care and health care insurance in this country. In this country, and we've got to talk about that a little bit more seriously. But it does not ever give the right for someone to take a life, and I think that's just the reality of it. So you think about healthcare companies; they become a monopoly in some ways. This should be about health and wellness, not about making a profit. And so I think if we can have that conversation in Congress or in the states, in the cities, in a more thoughtful manner, that's going to be welcomed by a lot of people.
Maura, any thoughts?
I have plenty of thoughts on this matter. I don't think that we should ever condone, accept, tolerate political violence. And the fact that we are even having this conversation is, again, showing that we have, in a large way, since January 6th, allowed it to be okay. We've started to normalize political violence in this way by equating it with, well, the election was stolen and they were angry, or healthcare is a problem. We have plenty of issues in our healthcare system. Again, quantifying and qualifying political violence is never okay, and we as a society need to step up and say, this is not how we should be doing things. America is better than this, and yet we continue to allow to be derailed and to tolerate political violence in this way. And you know, January 6th, we watched when the former president was targeted and shot. It largely was ignored after 2 weeks. You know, we moved on in the election cycle, we moved on in the news cycle, and we can't normalize it. No matter what you think of the target, the very fact that they are being targeted because of their leadership or positions they've taken doesn't make it okay, and we should all stand up against it.
We'll leave it there. Maura Gillespie and Haima Moore, we appreciate you stopping by and offering your insights here on America Decides. Thank you. Good to see you both. President Biden announced the largest single-day act of clemency in modern history. Coming up, who's at the receiving end of this historic decision and why it's happening now? You're watching America Decides.
Politics isn't a game. The data says you do have a women problem. Politics is about policy. Isn't that giving people false hope? I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. To be moderator of Face the Nation is not an anchor, it's not an actress. You are up here to moderate a conversation. That means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports. Tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt. Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are emergency. We are depressurized.
How could this have happened?
It's still happening right now.
Meet the Boeing whistleblowers who believe they know how.
They're fighting for faulty parts?
Yeah, and good parts. They're not too picky.
Wow.
It's time for a 60 Minutes investigation.
Sunday morning, the miracle of Paris's Notre Dame, plus actor Daniel Craig and Billie Eilish, 22 but already a legend. Listen for the trumpet.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
It was almost like being face-to-face with the devil.
Women riding bicycles dismembered.
She just vanished.
48 hours reports. I fought and fought.
911, what is your emergency?
She disappeared off the face of the earth.
Ever think in your wildest dreams someone might want to kill you?
This almost became a game of psychological warfare.
You're caught. You're gonna go down.
Stream 48 hours, 24/7.
Today, President Joe Biden announced the largest numbers of commutations and clemencies ever granted in a single day. The president is commuting the sentences of nearly 1,500 people who were released from prison and placed on home confinement during the COVID-19 pandemic. He's also pardoning 39 people convicted of nonviolent crimes. This comes less than 2 weeks after President Biden announced a broad pardon for his son Hunter, who was prosecuted for both gun and tax crimes. Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is at the big White House. Nancy, great to see you. Nancy, let's begin by listening to a former Biden advisor, top White House official for many years, Anita Dunn, and what she had to say about Hunter Biden's pardon.
I absolutely agree with the president's decision here. I do not agree with the way it was done. I don't agree with the timing, and I don't agree, frankly, with the attack on our judicial system. The argument is one that I think many observers are concerned about a president who ran to restore the rule of law, who has upheld the rule of law, who has really defended the rule of law, kind of saying, well, maybe not right now.
How is that going across the West Wing tonight, Nancy? What are you hearing from sources about Anita Dunn speaking out publicly in such a way?
So interesting, isn't it, Robert, to see the person who was in charge of White House messaging for several years, who was one of the fiercest defenders of Joe Biden, basically come out and say, I don't agree with the messaging here. I agree with the pardon, but not the way that they went about it, not the message, not the timing. The White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, was asked about that today, and she chose to focus on the sliver of Anita Dunn's message there that she really liked, which is that Dunn did say that she believes that Hunter Biden deserved that pardon. And so that's what they're choosing to focus on tonight.
Is this the end of the pardon process or just the beginning?
It is not the end. White House officials have told us to expect more acts of clemency. They say they're still going through all of the potential candidates. Today's batch, aside from the 39 pardons for individuals who had been convicted of nonviolent offenses, it really had to do with this big batch of 1,500 people whose sentences got commuted. These people had to meet a variety of criteria. They were moved to home confinement during the pandemic. They had to have shown that they had been rehabilitated, reintegrated into their families, working to make their communities safer places. And so that's what landed this group of 1,500 on the list. But White House officials tell us that that list could grow, and so we should expect more acts of clemency in the month and a half or so that President Biden has left.
Nancy, what's your read on the scene inside of the Biden White House these days? It's December. We're a little bit over a month away from the inauguration. The president is issuing these commutations and pardons. Some staffers are leaving. Some are going to stay through January. Mm-hmm. You've covered this administration through and through. What's your real take on all of this?
Well, I think they're focusing on a few big deliverables. For example, Jake Sullivan is in the Middle East right now, the president's national security advisor. He says there is a goal to try to reach some kind of hostage deal. This is something that has dragged on for months, obviously, between Israel and Hamas. Sometime in the next month, they would really like to walk out of the White House with that win. But you're right that in other ways, things are really winding down. We're used to daily interactions with the White House press secretary at White House briefings. Now those happen a couple of times a week. There was no traditional press conference being held by the president after the election last month. No word whether he'll hold one before he leaves office. We do anticipate he will give some sort of closing speech, farewell speech, before the end of his presidency, but we don't have many details on that either at this point.
Nancy Cordes at the White House. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Elected officials in New Jersey, the Garden State, demanding information now about sightings of mysterious drones in the skies. Everything we know so far and what we're still learning. That's coming up next. You're watching America Decides.
CBS Mornings Plus, clearly more news, more smart conversation.
More money-saving tips, more recipes.
More uplifting ways to get you on your way.
Plus, more sports, more weather.
Clearly, more CBS Mornings.
Plus,
sunshine day.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
I have a dorky look to me. I don't look like a criminal at all.
60 Minutes has reported on fraudsters, criminals, and hoodlums. But what this minor league thief was able to do surprised even us.
These are Yogi Berra's World Series rings.
A sports story you'll have to see to believe.
Need more time with 48 Hours? Go deep behind every true crime episode with first-hand accounts from 48 Hours Investigations.
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?
Shock is the word that comes to mind.
Get inside the twists and turns and get in on the case. Listen to Postmortem from 48 Hours, now available wherever you get your podcasts.
I think we're very cute.
Yeah, I think we need to send out a Christmas card like this.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
dollar Jill.
If you can't get into the market, it's okay. Renting is fine.
I wonder how Serena is feeling.
That's a really good question. No one's asked me that yet.
You're 70 years old?
70,
yeah. I'm 21.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
Sunday morning, the Music Man, T-Bone Burnett, plus Ted Danson, and Martha Stewart with Just the Recipe. Listen for the trumpet.
I report from a lot of war zones, but I don't really take the same risks.
He's one of the bravest war correspondents 60 Minutes has ever met. But it's his relationship with his mother that you will remember. Plus, the robots making marble masterpieces in Italy.
As a kid growing up in Chicago, there was one horror movie I was too scared to watch. It was called Candyman. But did you know that the movie Candyman was partly inspired by an actual murder? Listen to Candyman, the true story behind the bathroom mirror murder, wherever you get your podcasts.
The CBS News original 60 Minutes opens its archives.
Pretty loose for a Friday night.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not my first show.
With moments you haven't heard before.
It's almost more fun that way when you have something to prove.
Listen to 60 Minutes, a second look, wherever you get your podcasts.
People stop me on the street and say, I always learn something new every day when I watch your show.
Could your kitchen actually have some hidden dangers?
What is the downside of taking these drugs?
There are risks.
If customers are concerned about their data, what should they do?
We'll tell you how to drive away with the best deal.
I can see clearly now.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
You're telling me we don't know what the hell these drones are in New Jersey are? Is that correct?
That's right.
It's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. That's madness that we don't know what these drones are.
That was Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez sharing frustration that's being shared by residents across New Jersey. The FBI is leading an investigation into sightings of mysterious drones flying over the state in recent weeks. Officials say there is no known threat to public safety, but there's still no explanation for their appearance. New Jersey Governor Democrat Phil Murphy says he's met with the White House and Homeland Security advisor today to discuss concerns about the drone sightings and will continue to push for answers. Several lawmakers are also demanding information from federal authorities. Tina Kelly is here to shed some light on all of this. She is a senior reporter for NJ.com and the Star Ledger. Great to have you with us. So what's the latest on all of these drone sightings?
Well, there's no clear answer, and people are getting nervous, hoping to find an answer. There have been flyovers of 2 of our military installations and confirmed sightings over Picatinny Arsenal 11 different times. So people are concerned while our public officials are saying to consider it not a threat.
Why do they say it's not a threat?
They probably know more than we do. I've talked to 2 who said it's a threat, who are considering it a threat. One is the sheriff of Ocean County. Yesterday he said he did, and I know the mayor of Florham Park as well.
Yesterday, New Jersey Congressman Jeff Van Drew claimed the drones were tied to a possible, quote, missing mothership from Iran flying over the East Coast, which the Department of Defense quickly discredited, said that's not true. What do we know about this claim?
He said that he had it on good sources, so he wasn't sharing who those sources were, so we don't know.
You recently wrote an article outlining some perhaps interesting theories about where these drones could be coming from and what they're all about. Can you tell us more about your reporting and what you've thought about as you've spoken to sources?
Well, some are saying that they think it might be a startup company flying at night where they wouldn't need to have the proper waivers necessarily from the FAA. Others are thinking that possibly it's a top secret mission by our military who wouldn't have to tell other parts of the military, wouldn't have to tell the FBI, and certainly wouldn't have to tell reporters. Others still think it might be hobbyists who are trolling the news cycle, and there are folks on Facebook who think it might be people from another planet imitating drones. So there are all sorts of theories out there.
A state senator in New Jersey is now calling on Governor Murphy to declare a limited state of emergency and ban all drones in the Garden State until the public receives a more credible explanation. What's the talk in Trenton and elsewhere about what a limited statement of a public emergency or declaration like that could entail?
Well, it's unclear whether or not states can have any say over air traffic that's governed by the FAA. But I know that some folks would be happy with a ban of all drone traffic at night to calm things down for a while. That's not in my hands. It's probably in the Senate or in Governor Murphy's hands. I don't know.
Tina Kelly, thank you.
Thank you.
And that does it for us today. We will be back with another edition of America Decides Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report starts right now.